All right, family. Oh man, what we got going on here? Get my life together. I'm glad to be back with you for another book club. Um, I'm trying to check to make sure this. I gotta turn the volume down on this other phone. I gotta monitor. So yeah, I'm checking to see. I did some work earlier, and I was checking to see if. Find out. Yeah, I gotta figure that out. I'm looking now. I know on certain day, my man, Masir, telling me that the dropping frames, and I thought it was actually doing good on one of them, but let's side it is not. All right, so we're gonna finish. Well, I don't know if we're gonna finish. I need to check. Let me check. We will continue. I am excited. Had a very, very, very productive day. I think I got the rough draft. Oh, I have the book that I plan on writing. I got it pretty much. The table of contents set up. I got a good introduction. I worked on the closing, and I have the order of the book right now, but I might still adjust that some more. I have to add where's that? Okay, Celestine Prophecy. Here we go. It's a little more work I had to do to that, but I'm excited. I got the rough draft down. Good for me. So we are on our third eye, and the energy that for that is thought. I mean, the element for that is thought. Excuse me, no, is light. Excuse me. What am I thinking? I know we're gonna do a Care Bear stare for the visualization because I love Care Bears. So we're gonna start with the bowl. I do got the rain stick and a steel drum, so we'll see how that goes, how the vibe goes. Doo-doo-doo. I appreciate it. Yeah, I want to do the rain stick last. Can't get a good sound with that one. I like that. It's the only one like that. I'm gonna have to do some adjustments. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some work on my little drum. Okay, so we're gonna do our breathing exercise. I think I want to do 369. Pop them up. 369. It popped in my head. So if you don't recall, it is you breathe in, hold it for 3, and release. You breathe in, hold it for 6, then release. And then you breathe in, hold it for 9, then release. We're gonna do it 3 times. On my count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in, 2, 3. Release. Breathe in, two, three, four, five, six. Release. Breathe in, hold it for 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Release. Breathe in, hold it for 3, 2, 3. Release. Breathe in, hold it for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Release. Breathe in, hold it for 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Release. Last time. Breathe in, hold it for 3, 2, 3. Release. Breathe in, hold it for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Release. Breathe in, hold it for 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and release. So as I said, the element for your third eye is element of light. So we're going to do a little visualization dealing with light. I remember when I was a kid, one of my favorite cartoons was the Care Bears. And one of the things that made the Care Bears interesting is they all had the power of light. But each Care Bear had a different symbol that represented what their light power was, whether it be a heart, whether it was a rainbow, whether it was a 4-leaf clover. They just had various shapes that represented the power of their light, right? So I want you to imagine yourself standing in a space. Everything that you see is gray. And it has a feeling of dreariness. And as you look at this gray, I want you to take a pause, develop a whole city or a whole countryside or views from the mountains, but picture it all gray. Now, as you're looking out at this gray, I want you to take a pause and look down at yourself. And I want you to see a light building within you. I want you to design that light in the shape of what resonates with you. What do you feel like needs healing? What is one of your goals? Whether it be a shape that represents love or a shape that represents forgiveness. If you think your empathy is your greatest gift, then I want you to create a shape of your own design that represents that. And as you are creating that shape and watching that light build, I want you to envision that light coming out of you and changing the landscape in front of you. It's bringing color, life, love, laughter, people, animals, plants to life. You're watching as your light radiates and changes the world around you. How does that make you feel? What type of feelings can you hold on to? Now, as you see that light radiating and changing the landscape, beautifying the world around you, I want you to imagine that light turning and shining directly on you. Now, cover yourself in your greatest gifts. Feel the feelings that you just gave to the world. Apply them to yourself. Resonate and heal. And as that light is shining on you, I want you to repeat after me. I trust my intuition. My imagination is powerful. I think clearly. My third eye sees all. I trust my intuition. My imagination is powerful. I think clearly. And my third eye sees all. All right. So we are somewhere, I don't know, in the book. Doo-doo-doo. I think he's with a priest and they're going to the Equos someplace to speak with Father Sebastian and trying to get him to not be as fearful of these key insights of life, right? And Dobson is explaining the idea of the insights. He's, as a matter of fact, he's drawing connection between the insights as they find the ninth key insights of life. We then sent science out to discover our true situation. But when this effort didn't provide the answers that we needed right away, reality and squeezed the mystery out of the world. But now we can see this the truth of that preoccupation for human life was to set the stage for something else. A way of life that returns the mystery to existence. This is what the information now returning from the scientific method indicates. Mankind is on this planet to consciously evolve. And as we learn to evolve and pursue our particular path, by truth, the ninth insight says the overall culture will transform in a very predictable way. He paused, but no one said anything. Obviously, we want to hear more. Once we reach the critical mass, the tipping point, he continued, and the insights begin to come in on a global scale, the human race will first experience a period of intense introspection. We'll grasp how beautiful and spiritual the natural world is. We'll see the trees and rivers and mountains as temples of great power to be held in reverence and awe. We'll demand an end to any economic activity that threatens this treasure. And those closest to the situation will find alternative solutions to this pollution problem because someone will intuit these alternatives as they seek their own evolution. This will be part of the first great shift that would occur, he continued, which will be a dramatic movement of individuals from one occupation to another because when people begin to receive clear intuitions of who they really are and what they're supposed to be doing, they very often discover they're in the wrong job and they have to jump to another type of work in order to continue to grow. The manuscript says that during this people will sometimes change careers several times during their lifetimes. I'm that person. Somewhat. The next cultural shift will be an automation of the production of goods need to make the economy run more efficiently. But as their intuitions become clearer, they will see that what automation is actually doing is freeing up everyone's time so that we can pursue other endeavors. The rest of us, meanwhile, will be following our own intuitions within our chosen occupations, wishing we had even more of this free time than within a usual job setting, for sure. So we will find ways to cut our employment hours to pursue our own truth. 2 or 3 people will hold what used to be one full time, at least a part time job. But what about money? I asked. I can't believe people will voluntarily reduce their incomes. Oh, we won't have to, Dobson said. The manuscript says our incomes will remain stable because the people who are giving us money for the insights we provide. I almost laughed. He smiled and looked directly at me. The manuscript says that as we discover more about energy dynamics of the universe, we will see what really happens when we give someone something. Right now, the only spiritual idea about giving is the narrow concept of a religious tithing. He moved his gaze to Father Sanchez. As you know, the scriptural notion of tithing is interpreted most commonly as an injunction to give 10% of one's income to the church. The idea behind this is that whatever we give is really a universal principle of support, not just for churches, but for everyone. Remember, when we first project energy into someone, this creates a void in us. Money works exactly the same way. The ninth insight says that once we begin to give constantly, we will always have more coming in than we could possibly give away. And our gifts, he went on, should go to the persons who have given us spiritual truth. When people come into our lives at just the right time to give us the answers we need, we should give them money. This is how we will begin to supplement our incomes and ease out of the occupations which limit us. As more people engage in this spiritual economy, we will begin a real shift into a culture of the next millennium. We will have moved through the stage of evolution into our right occupation and will be entering the stage of getting paid for evolving freely and offering our unique truth to others. I looked at Sanchez. He was listening intensely and appeared radiant. Yes, he said to Dobson, I can see that clearly. If everyone were participating, then we will be giving and receiving constantly, and this interaction with others, this exchange of information, will become everyone's new work, our new economic orientation. We'd be paid by the people we touch. This situation would then allow the material supports of life to become fully automated because we're too busy to our own systems or to operate them. We will want material production automated and run like a utility. We'd own stock in it perhaps, but the situation would free us up to expand what is already the information age. But the important thing for us right now is that we can now understand where we are going. We could not save the environment and democratize the planet and feed the poor because for so long we could not release our fear of scarcity and our need to control so that we could give to others. We couldn't release it because we had no view of life that served as an alternative. Now we do. He looked at Phil. But we didn't need a cheap source of energy. But wouldn't we need a cheap source of energy? Fusion, superconductivity, artificial intelligence, Phil said. The technology to automate is probably not that far away. Now that we have the knowledge of why to do it. That's right, Dobson said. The most important thing is that we see the truth of this way of life. We're here on this planet not to build personal empires of control, but to evolve. Paying others for their insight will begin the transformation, and then some more, and more parts of the economy are automated. Currency will disappear altogether. We won't need it. If we're following, if we're correctly following out intuitive guidance, then we will take only what we need. And we'll understand, Phil interjected, that the natural areas of the earth have to be nurtured and protected for the sources of incredible power lifted provided. I haven't studied all the insights, he said, looking at me. In fact, after the guard helped me escape, I might not have kept this part of the ninth at all if I hadn't run into you earlier. I remembered what you said about the manuscript being important, but even though I haven't read the other insights, I do understand the importance of keeping the automation in harmony with the energy dynamics of the earth. My interest has been in forests and the part they play in the ecosphere, he continued. I now know that it has always been, ever since I was a child. The ninth insight says that the human race evolves spiritually. We will voluntarily decrease the population to a point sustainable by the earth. We will be committed to living within the natural energy systems of the planet. Farming will be automated except for the plants one wants to energize personally and then consume. The trees necessary for construction will be grown in a special designated area. This will be free from the remainder of the earth's trees to grow, and the age will finally mature into the powerful forest. Eventually, these forests will be the rule rather than the exception, and all human beings will live in close proximity to this kind of power. Think what an energy filled world we'd live in. That ought to raise everyone's energy level, I said. Yes, it would, Sanchez said distractedly, as though he were thinking ahead about what the increase of energy would mean. Everyone waited. It would accelerate, he said finally. The pace of our evolution, the more readily we have energy flowing into us, the more mysteriously the universe responds by bringing people into our lives to answer our questions. He looked thoughtful again. And every time we follow an intuition and some mysterious encounter leads us forward, our personal vibration increases. Onward and upward, he continued, half to himself, if history continued vibration. Dobson said, finishing his sentence. Yes, Sanchez said. That's it. Excuse me for a minute. He got up and walked several yards into the forest and sat down alone. What else does the ninth insight said? I asked Dobson. We don't know, he said. That's where the parts we have end. Would you like to see it? I told him I would. So he walked to his truck and came back with a manila folder. Inside were 20 typed pages. I read the manuscript, impressed with how thoroughly Dobson and Field had captured his basic points. When I came to the last page, I understood why they said it was only part of the ninth insight. It ended abruptly, in the middle of a concept. Having just introduced the idea that transformation of this planet will create a totally spiritual culture and would raise human beings to a higher and a higher vibration, they suggest that this ride will lead to the occurrence of something else, but it didn't say what. After an hour, Sanchez stood up and walked over to me. I had been content to sit with the plants, observing their energy fields. Dobson and Phil were standing behind their Jeep talking. I think we should go on equals, he said. What about those soldiers? I asked. I think we should risk it. I've had a clear thought that we could make it through if we leave right now. I agreed to go with his intuition, and we walked over to told Dobson and Phil our plans. Both men supported the idea. Then Dobson said, we've also been discussing what to do. We're going directly to the Celestine ruins, I think. Maybe we can help save the rest of the ninth insight. We bade them goodbye and drove north again. What are you thinking about? I asked after a period of silence. Father Sanchez slowed the truck and looked at me. I'm thinking about Cardinal Sebastian, about what you said, that he would stop fighting the manuscript if only he could be made to understand. As Father Sanchez made this statement, My mind wandered into a daydream of actually confronting Sebastian. He was standing in a courtly room looking down at us. At that moment, he had the power to destroy the ninth insight, and we were fighting to make him understand before it was too late. I finished the thought. I noticed Sanchez was smiling at me. What were you seeing? He said. I was just thinking of Sebastian. What was happening? The image of confronting Sebastian was clearer. He was about to destroy the last insight. We were trying to talk him out of it. Sanchez took a deep breath. It looks like whether the rest of the ninth insight becomes known will depend on us. My stomach drew into a knot at the idea. See the positive. To understand that the manuscript as a whole does negate but clarifies the truth of the church. I'm sure the rest of the ninth insight does just that. We rode in silence for an hour, seeing no other traffic of any kind. My thoughts raced through the events which had transpired since I'd come to Peru. Unconsciousness, I was alert to the mysterious way life had evolved, as revealed by the first insight. I knew the whole culture was sensing this mystery again as well, and we were in the process of constructing a new worldview, as pointed out by the second. Third and the fourth had showed me that the universe was in reality a vast system of energy, and that human conflict was a shortage of and a manipulation for this energy. The fifth insight revealed that okay, the fifth insight revealed that we could end this conflict by receiving an inpouring of this energy from a higher source. For me, this ability had almost become a habit. The sixth insight that we could clear out our old repeated dramas and find our true selves was also permanently etched selves through question, intuition of what to do, and answer. Staying in this magic flow was truly the secret of happiness. And the eighth, knowing how to relate to new in new ways to others, bringing out them the very best, was the key to keeping the mystery operating and the answers coming. All the insights had integrated into a consciousness that felt like a heightened sense of alertness and expectation. What was left, I knew, was the ninth, which revealed where our evolution was taking us. We had to discover some of it. What about the rest? Father Sanchez pulled the truck to the side of the road. We were within 4 miles of Cardinal Sebastian's mission. He said, I think we should talk. Okay. I don't know what to expect, but I presume all we can do is drive right in. How large is this place? Large. He has developed the mission for 20 years. He selected this location to serve the rural Indians whom he felt had been neglected. But now students come from all over Peru. He has administrative duties with the church organization in Lima, but this is his special project. He is totally devoted to this mission. He looked directly into my eyes. Please stay alert. There may come a time where we need to help each other. After saying this, drove ahead. For several miles, we saw nothing. Then we passed two military jeeps parked at the right side of the road. The soldiers looked at us intensely as we drove by. Well, Father Sanchez said, they know we're here. A mile further, we came to the entrance of the mission. Huge iron gates protected the paved drive. Although the gates were open, a jeep and four soldiers blocked our way and signaled us to stop. One of the military men talked in a short wave radio. Sanchez smiled as the soldiers walked up. I'm Father Sanchez, here to see Cardinal Sebastian. The soldier scrutinized Sanchez, then me. He turned and walked back to the soldier with the radio. They talked without taking their eyes off us. After several minutes, the soldier came back and said we should follow them. The jeep led us up a tree-lined drive for several hundred yards until we came to the mission grounds. The church was built of cut stone and was massive, capable of seating, I guess, over 1,000 people. On both sides of the church were two other buildings, which looked like classrooms. Both were 4 stories high. The place is impressive, I said. Yes, but where are the people? He asked. I noticed the path and the walkways were empty. Sebastian runs a famous school here. He said, why are there no students? The soldiers led us to the entrance of the walked up the cement steps. I could see several trucks parked behind an adjacent building. 30 or 40 soldiers stood at attention nearby. Once inside, we were led through the sanctuary and asked to wait. The soldiers left and the door was locked. Where's Sebastian's office? I asked. Further back towards the rear of the church, he said. The door suddenly opened. Flanked by several soldiers stood Sebastian. Sanchez, I want to talk with you, Sanchez said. About what? The ninth insight of the manuscript. There's nothing to discuss. It will never be found. We know you already found it. Sebastian's eyes widened. I will not allow the insight to be disseminated, he said. It is not the truth. How do you know it's not the truth? Sanchez asked. You could be wrong. Let me read it. Sebastian's face softened as he looked at Sanchez. You used to think I would make the correct decisions in a matter of this kind. I know, Sanchez said. You were my mentor. Manuscript was discovered, Sebastian said. Don't you see how divisive it is? I tried to let you go your own way. I even left you alone after I knew you were teaching the insights. But I will not let this document destroy everything the church has built. Another soldier walked up behind Sebastian and asked to see him. Sebastian glanced at Sanchez, then walked back into the hall. We could still see, but no longer could hear the conversation. The message obviously alarmed Sebastian. As he turned and walked away, he signaled for all the soldiers to follow except for one, whom he apparently told to wait with us. The soldier walked into the room and leaned against the wall. The soldier only shook his head. It's about the manuscript, the ninth insight. The soldier's face displayed surprise. What do you know of the ninth insight? He asked timidly. We're here to save it, Sanchez says. I want to save it too, the soldier replied. Have you read it? I asked. No, he said, but I have heard talk. It brings our religion alive. Suddenly, from outside the church came the sound of gunfire. What's going on? Sanchez asked. The soldier stood motionless. Sanchez gently touched his arm. Help us. The young soldier walked to the door and checked the hall, then said, Someone has broken into the church and stolen a copy of the ninth insight. They seem to still be here on the ground somewhere. More gunfire broke out. We must try to help them, Sanchez told the young man. He looked horrified. We must do what's right, Sanchez stressed. This is for the whole world. The soldier nodded and said, we should move to another area of the church where there would be less activity, that perhaps he could find a way to help. He led us down the hall and up 2 flights of stairs to a large corridor which spanned the full width of the church. Sebastian's office is right below us, 2 stories down, the young man said. Suddenly, we could hear a group of people running down an adjacent corridor heading our way. Sanchez and the soldier were ahead of me and ducked into a room to the right. I knew I couldn't reach the room, so I ran into the next one and closed the door. I was in the classroom. Desk, podium, closet. I ran to the closet and found it unlocked and squeezed in amid the boxes and several musty-smelling jackets. I attempted to conceal myself as best as I could, but I knew if anyone checked the closet, I would be discovered. I tried not to move, not even to breathe. The door of the classroom squeaked open, and I could hear several people enter and walk about the room. One seemed to be coming towards the closet, then stopped and headed in another direction. They were talking loudly in Spanish, then silence, no movement. I waited 10 minutes before I slowly cracked the door and looked out. The room was empty. I walked to the door. There was no indication of anyone outside. I quickly walked to the room where Sanchez and the soldier had hidden. To my surprise, I found it was not a room at all, but a hallway. I listened, but couldn't hear anything. I leaned against the wall, Feeling anxiety in the pit of my stomach, I quietly called out Sanchez's name. No response. I was alone. I could feel slight dizziness from the anxiety. I took a deep breath and tried to talk to myself. I had to keep my wits about me and increase my energy. For several minutes, I struggled until the colors and shapes in the hallways had more presence. I tried to project love. Finally, I felt better and thought of Sebastian again. If he was in his office, Sanchez would go there. Ahead, the hallway ended at another staircase. So I walked 2 flights down to the first level. Through the window of the stairway door, I looked down the corridor. No one was in view. I opened the door and walked ahead, not sure where I wanted to go. Then I heard Sanchez's voice coming from a room in front of me. The door was cracked. Sebastian's voice boomed right back at him. As I approached the door, the soldier inside opened it suddenly and pointed a rifle at my heart, forcing me inside against the wall. Sanchez acknowledged me with a glance and put his hand on his solar plexus. Sebastian shook his head in disgust. The young soldier who had helped us was nowhere to be seen. I knew that Sanchez's gesture to his stomach meant something. All I could think of was that he needed energy. As he spoke, I focused on his face, trying to see his higher self. His energy field widened. You can't stop the truth, Sanchez said. People have a right to know. Sebastian looked condescendingly at Sanchez. These insights violate the scriptures. They could not be true. But do they really violate the scriptures, or do they just show us what the scriptures mean? We know what the scriptures mean, Sebastian said. We've known for centuries. Have you forgotten your training, your years of studies? No, I haven't, Sebastian said. But I also know that the insight expanded our spirituality. They, according to whom, Sebastian shouted, who wrote this manuscript anyway? Some pagan Mayan who learned somewhere how to speak? Aramaic? What do these people know? They believed in magical places and mysterious energy. They were primitives. The ruins where the ninth was found is called the Celestine temples, the heavenly temples. What could this culture possibly know about heaven? Did their culture endure? He continued. No. No one knows what happened to the Mayans. They just disappeared without a trace. And you want us to believe the manuscript? This document makes it sound as though humans are in control, as though we are in charge of change in the world. We are not. God is. The only issues human face is whether to accept the scriptural teachings and thereby win our own salvation. That's interesting. But think about that, Sanchez replied. What does accepting the teachings and winning salvation really mean? What is the process through which this happens? Doesn't the manuscript show us that exact process of becoming more spiritual, connected, saved the way it feels exactly? And doesn't the 8th and 9th insight show us what would happen if everyone were to act this way? Sebastian shook his head and walked away, then turned and looked at Sebastian piercingly. You haven't seen the 9th insight. Yes, I have. Part of it. How? Part of it was described to me before we arrived here. I read another section a few minutes ago. What? How? Sanchez walked closer to the older priest, calling Sebastian. People everywhere want this last insight revealed. It places the other insights into perspective. It shows us our destiny, what spiritual consciousness really is. We know what spirituality is, Father Sanchez. Do we? I think not. We've spent centuries talking about it, visualizing it, professing our belief in it, but we've always characterized this connection as something abstract, something we believe in intellectually. And we've always cast this connection as something an individual must do to avoid something bad happening rather than to acquire something good and tremendous. That fear-based. The manuscript describes this inspiration that comes when we are truly loving others and evolving our lives forward. Evolve, evolve. Listen to yourself. Father, you have always fought against the influence of evolution. What has happened to you? Sanchez collects himself. Yes, I fought against the idea of evolution as a replacement for God, as a way to explain the universe without reverence of to God. But now I see the truth as a synthesis of the scientific and religious worldviews. The truth is that evolution is the way God created, and it is still creating. But there is no evolution, Sebastian. No, that's crazy. Sebastian created bananas are a perfect example. God created this world and that's it. Sanchez glanced at me, but I had no ideas to express. Calling Sebastian, he continued, the manuscript describes the progress of succeeding generations as an evolution of understanding, an evolution towards a higher spirituality and vibration. Each generation incorporates more energy and accumulates more truth and then passes that status on to the people of the next generation who will extend it further. That's nonsense, Sebastian said. There is only one way to become more spiritual, and that's by following the examples in the scripture. Exactly, Sanchez said. But again, what are those examples? Isn't the story in the scriptures a story of people learning to receive God energy and will within? Isn't that what the early prophets led the people to do in the Old Testament? And isn't that the receptivity to God, God's energy within, what culminated in the life of a carpenter's son to the extent that we say God himself descended to earth? Isn't the story of the New Testament, he continued, the story of a group of people being filled with some kind of energy that transformed them? Didn't Jesus himself say that what he did, we could also do and more? He did. We've never really taken that idea seriously, not until now. We're only now grasping what Jesus was talking about, where he was leading us. The manuscript clarifies what he meant, how to do it. Sebastian looked away, his face red with anger. During the pause in the conversation, a high-ranking officer burst into the room and told Sebastian that the intruders had been seen. Look, the officer said, pointing out the windows. There they are. 300 or 400 yards away, we could see two figures running through an open field towards the forest. A number of soldiers at the edge of a clearing seemed ready to open fire. The officer turned from the window and looked at Sebastian, his radio raised. If they get to the wooded area, he said, they will be hard to find. Do we have permission to open fire? I watched the two men running and suddenly recognized who they were. That's Will and Julia, I shouted. Sanchez walked even closer to Sebastian. In the name of God, you cannot commit murder over this. The officer persisted, calling Sebastian. If you want this manuscript contained, I must give that order now. I was frozen. Father, trust me, Sanchez was saying. The manuscript will not erode all that you have built, all you have stood for. You cannot kill these people. Sebastian shook his head. Trust you? Then he sat down on his desk and looked at the officer. We will shoot no one. Tell your troop to capture them alive. The officer nodded and walked out the room. Sanchez said, thank you. You made the right choice. Not to kill, yes, Sebastian said, but I will not change my mind. This manuscript is a curse. It will undermine our basic structure of spiritual authority. Yes, that's what he don't want to give up, his power. It would entice people to think that they are in control of their spiritual destiny, but he is. It would undermine the discipline needed to bring everyone on the planet into the church. And people will be caught wanting when the rapture comes. He looked hard at Sanchez. At this moment, thousands of troops are arriving. It doesn't matter what you or anyone else does. The ninth insight will never leave Peru. Now get out of my mission. As we sped away, we could hear dozens of trucks approaching in the distance. Why did he let us go? I asked. I suppose because he thinks it makes no difference. Sanchez replied that there's nothing we can do. I really don't know what to think. His eyes met mine. We didn't convince him, you know. I too was confused. What did it mean? Perhaps we hadn't been there to convince Sebastian after all. Perhaps we were there supposedly to delay him. I glanced back at Sanchez. He was concentrating on driving and searching the roadway for any sign of Will and Julia. We decided that we would double back in the direction we had been going, but so far we had seen nothing. As we rode, my mind wandered to the Celestine ruins. I imagined what the site looked like: the tiered excavations, the scientist's tent, the looming pyramidal structures in the background. They don't seem to be in these woods, Sanchez said. They must have had a vehicle. We must decide what to do. Oh, God, excuse me. I think we should go to the ruins, I said. He looked at me. We might as well. There's nowhere else to go. Sanchez made a turn to the west. What do you know of these ruins? I asked. They were built by. Okay, we're almost done. Boop, boop, boop. They were built by two different cultures, as Julia said. The first, the Mayans, had a thriving civilization there, though most of their temples were further north in the Yucatan. Mysteriously, all signs of their civilization vanished around 600 BC without apparent cause. The Incas developed another civilization afterwards in the same location. What do you think happened to the Mayans? Sanchez glanced at me. I don't know. We rode for several minutes in silence. Then I suddenly remembered that Father Sanchez had told Sebastian he had read more of the Ninth Insight. How did you see more of the Ninth Insight? I asked. A young soldier who helped us knew where another part was being hidden. After you and I were separated, he took me to another room and showed it to me. It added only a few more concepts to what Phil and Dobson told us, but it gave me points I used with Sebastian. What did it say specifically? The manuscript would clarify many religions and would help them fulfill their promise. All religion, it says, is about humankind finding relationship to the one higher source. And all religions speak of the perception of God within, a perception that fills us, makes us more than we are. Religions become corrupted when leaders are assigned to explain God's will to the people instead of showing them how to find this direction within themselves. That's the problem. The middleman. The manuscript says that sometime in the history, one individual would grasp the exact way of connecting with God's source of energy and direction and would thus become lasting example that this connection is possible. Sanchez looked at me. Isn't that what Jesus really did? Didn't he increase his energy and vibration until he was light enough to? Sanchez ended his sentence without finishing it and seemed to be deep in thought. What are you thinking? I asked. Hmm. Sanchez looked perplexed. I don't know. The soldier's copy ended right there. It said that this individual blazed a path that the whole human race was destined to follow, but it didn't say where this path led. For 15 minutes, we rode in silence. I attempted to receive some indication of what would happen next, but I could think of nothing. I seemed to be trying too hard. There are the ruins, Sanchez said. Ahead, through the forest on the left of the road, I could make out three large pyramidal shaped structures. After we parked and walked closer, I can tell that the pyramids were constructed out of cut stone and were spaced an equal distance apart, about 100 feet. Between them was an area paved with smooth stone. Several excavation sites were dug into the base of the pyramids. Look here, Sanchez said, pointing towards the more distant pyramids. A lone figure was sitting in front of the structure. As we walked that way, I noticed an increase to my energy level. By the time we reached the center of the paved area, I felt incredibly energized. I looked at Sanchez and he raised his eyebrow. When we got closer, I recognized the person by the pyramid to be Julia. She sat cross-legged and held several papers in her lap. Julia, Sanchez called. Julia turned and stood up. Her face seemed iridescent. Where's Will? I asked. Julia pointed to her right. There, perhaps 100 yards away, was Will. He seemed to be glowing in the fading twilight. What's he doing? I asked. The ninth, Julia replied, holding the papers towards us. Sanchez told Julia that he had seen some of the insight, the part which foretold of a human world transformed by conscious evolution. But where does evolution take us? Sanchez asked. Julia didn't answer. She just held the papers in her hand as though she expected us to read her mind. What? I asked. Sanchez reached over and touched my forearm. He looked His look reminded me to stay alert and to wait. The ninth reveals our ultimate destiny, Julia said. It makes it all crystal clear. It reiterates that as humans, we are the culmination of the whole evolution. It is about matter beginning a weak form and increasing in complexity, element by element, then species by species, always evolving into a higher state of vibration. When primitive humans came along, we continued this evolution unconsciously by conquering others and gaining energy and moving forward a little bit, and then being conquered ourselves by someone else and losing our energy. This physical conflict continued until we invented democracy, a system that didn't end the conflict but shifted it from a physical to a mental level. Now, Julia went on, we're bringing this whole process into consciousness. We can see that all of human history has prepared us to achieve conscious evolution. Now we can increase our energy and experience the coincidences consciously. She hesitated for a moment, looking at each of us, then repeated what she said. Our destiny is to continue to increase our energy level. And as our energy level increases, the level of vibration in our atoms of our body increase. She hesitated again. What does that mean? I asked. It means, Julia said, that we're getting lighter, more purely spiritual. I looked at Sanchez. He was focused intensely on Julia. The ninth insight, Julia continued, says that we as humans continue to increase our vibration. An amazing thing will begin to happen. Whole groups of people, once they reach a certain level, will suddenly become invisible to those who are still vibrating at a lower level. It appears to people on this level that they have just disappeared, but the group themselves will feel as though they are still right here, only they will feel lighter. You definitely vibrate on different planes. Some people can't see you. That's why certain things I don't worry about, because I don't vibrate on an energy level that would attract that. As Julia talked, I noticed her face and body was changing somewhat. Her body was taking on the characteristics of her energy field. Her features were still clear and distinct, but it was no longer muscles and skin at which I was looking. She looked as though she were made of pure light, glowing from within. I looked at Sanchez. He appeared the same way. To my amazement, everything Steve had increased beyond anything I had ever experienced before, even when on top of the ridge. When humans begin to raise their vibrations to a level where others cannot see them, Julia continued, it will signal that we are crossing the barrier between life and the other world from which we came, to which we go after death. This consciousness crossing over of the path shown by the Christ, he opened up to the energy until he was so light he could walk on water. He took the world into spiritual. His life demonstrated how to do this. And if we connect with the same source, we can head in the same way, step by step. At some point, everyone will vibrate highly enough so that we can walk into heaven in our same form. I noticed Will was walking slowly towards us. His movements seemed unusually graceful, as though he was gliding. Yeah. Vibration during the third millennium and in groups consisting of people with whom they are most connected. But some cultures in history have already achieved the vibration. According to the ninth insight, minds crossed over together. Julia abruptly stopped talking. From behind us, we heard muffled voices in Spanish. Dozens of soldiers were entering the ruins, coming right for us. To my surprise, I was unafraid. The soldiers continued to walk in our general direction, but strangely, not directly towards us. They can't see us, Sanchez said. We're vibrating too high. I looked again at the soldiers. He was right. They were walking 20 or 30 feet to our left, completely ignoring us. Suddenly, we heard loud shouts in Spanish by the pyramid to our left. The soldiers closest to us stopped and ran in that direction. I strained to see what was happening. Another group of soldiers were emerging from the forest, holding their arms of two other men, Dobson and Field. The sight of their capture jolted me, and I could feel my energy plummet. I looked at Sanchez and Julia. Both were staring intently toward the soldier, appearing equally disturbed. Wait, Will seemed to shout from the opposite direction. Don't lose your energy. I felt the words as well as heard them. They were slightly garbled. I turned to see Will walking quickly towards us. As he watched, he seemed to say something else, but this time, words were completely unintelligible. I realized I was having trouble focusing, his image becoming hazy, distorted. Gradually, as I stared in disbelief, he disappeared altogether. Julia turned to face Sanchez and me. Her energy seemed lower, but she was completely undaunted, as though whatever happened clarified something. We weren't able to maintain the vibration, she said. Fear lowers one vibration tremendously. She looked toward the spot where Will had faded view. The ninth inside said, while some individuals may cross over sporadically, the general rapture will not occur until we have abolished fear, until we can maintain a sufficient vibration in all situations. Julia's excitement grew. Don't you see? We can't do it yet, but the ninth insight is to help create that confidence. The ninth insight is the insight of knowing where we are heading. All other insights create a picture of the world as one incredible beauty and energy, and ourselves as increasing our connection with and thus seeing this beauty. Great. The ninth insight shows us that ultimately our increased perception and vibration will open up to us a heaven that is already before us. I know that's right. We just can't see it. Whenever we doubt our own path or lose sight of the process, we must remember that we are in heaven on earth is why we are here. And now we know it can be done. That a 10th insight exists. I think it must reveal, before she could finish, a burst of machine gun fire ripped up the stone tiles by our feet. We all dived to the ground, our hands raised. No one spoke as a soldier came and confiscated the papers and took each of us in a different direction. Yeah. The first weeks after my capture, hey, the first weeks after my capture were spent in constant terror. My energy levels fell dramatically as one military officer after another questioned me threateningly about the manuscript. Oh, God, excuse me. I played the dumb tourist and claimed ignorance. After all, it was true that I had no idea who among the priests had copies or how widespread the public acceptance of the documents had become. Gradually, my tactic worked. Over time, the soldiers seemed to grow tired of me and passed me on to a group of civilian authorities who took a different approach. These officials sought to convince me that my trip to Peru had been crazy from the beginning. Crazy because, according to them, the manuscript never really existed. They argued that the insights had in fact been invented by a small group of priests with the intent of fostering a rebellion. I had been duped, these officials told me, and I let them talk. After a while, the conversation became almost cordial. Everyone began to treat me as a guiltless victim of this plot. As a gullible Yankee who read she was low, I possibly would have become vulnerable to this brainwashing had something else not occurred. I was suddenly transferred from the military base where I was being held to a governmental compound near the airport in Lima, a compound in which Father Carl was also being detained. The coincidence brought back some of my lost confidence. I was walking into the open courtyard when I first saw him sitting on a bench, reading. I strolled over, restraining my exuberance, and looked up at me and grinned. I've been expecting you, he said. You have? He put his book down. I got immediately detained and separated. I've been here in custody ever since. I couldn't understand why nothing seemed to be happening. Then I began to think about you repeatedly. He gave me a knowing look, so I figured you would show up. I'm grateful you're here, I said. Did anyone tell you what happened at the Celestine ruins? Yes, Father Carl replied. I spoke briefly with Father Sanchez. He was being held there for a day before being taken away. Is he all right? Did he know what happened to the others? And what about him? Where are they going to imprison him? He had no information about the others. And as far for Father Sanchez, I don't know. The government's strategy is to methodically search out and destroy all copies of the manuscript, then treat the whole affair as a grand hoax. We'll all be thoroughly discredited, I imagine, but who knows what they will ultimately do with us. What about Dobson's copy? I said. The first and the second insights he left in the States. They already have them, Father Carr replied. Father Sanchez told me that agents of the government found out where they were being hidden and stole them. Apparently, Peruvian agents have been everywhere. They knew about Dobson from the beginning and about your friend Charlene. And you think when the government is through, away, feeling my newfound energy diminish. You know what this means, don't you? Father Carl asked. I looked at him but said nothing. This means, he continued, that each of us must remember exactly what the manuscript said. You and Sanchez didn't convince Cardinal Sebastian to release the manuscript, but you delayed him long enough for the insight to be understood. Now it has to be communicated. You have to be involved in communicating it. His statement made me feel pressured, and my aloof drama activated inside me. I leaned against the back of the bench and looked away, which made Father Carl laugh. Then, at just that moment, we both, from now on, the insights will have to be shared between people. Each person, each one teach one, is ready for it. Connecting with the energy is something humans have to be open to and talk about and expecting. Otherwise, the whole human race can go back to pretending that life is about having power over others and exploiting the planet. If we go back to doing this, then we won't survive. Each of us must do what we can to get this message out. I noticed that two officials were out of the building walking towards us. One more thing, Father Carl said, speaking slowly. What? I asked. Father Carl, no one knows where it might be. The officials were almost on us. I've been thinking, Father Carl continued, that they're going to release you. You may be the only one that can look for it. The men suddenly interrupted our conversation and escorted me to the building. Father Carl smiled and waved and said something else, but I couldn't only half pay attention. As soon as Father Carl had mentioned the 10th insight, I had been consumed by thoughts of Charlene. Why was I thinking of her? How was she connected to a 10th insight? The two men insisted that I pack a few things directly to the airport and up to a boarding concourse, where one of them smiled faintly and looked at me from behind thick glasses. His smile faded as he handed me a passport and a ticket for a flight to the United States, then told me in a heavy Peruvian accent to never return. The Celestine Prophecies, I think that was cute. I enjoyed it. I think it fed in pretty good with what we just read, The Alchemist. I think it was a good follow up to The Alchemist, but we're gonna do something totally different next time. It's not gonna be so heavy on the spiritual and all that stuff. So, I appreciate your time. Hopefully, if you got a little time on Tuesday, come check us out Tuesday. We'll be talking about what is good for the soul, going deeper into that. We just finished up 7 spaces of healing, which I'm gonna change a little bit. I don't know how, but I plan on it. If you can't make it Tuesday or Soul Swami Live, I hope to see you Thursday. Well, we're gonna start a new book. Again, I hope you have a great rest of your week. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And family, I plan to see ya next week. Right. Thanks, my people. Listen, I'll be trying to do this app. It's supposed to allow me to change pages, but it'd be embarrassing me in front of company. So later, people.